keep it short because I just recorded 10 minutes of something that my phone didn't record. But I was talking some shit for 5 minutes of it because I'm just annoyed. And if you can't be a good human, then don't be here. Don't watch me. Don't come in my comments. Don't be an asshole. You're really wasting your time. But I guess I was only supposed to say that. But I just want to apologize to you guys. This is late. But I'm going to probably go live at some point tomorrow and I'll share the other part of this. But hopefully you enjoy this bedtime story. It's longer than I thought, but you have to stay till the end. And if you were in my live the other night, you know that you have to stay till the end, but you don't know the beginning. And long story short, this is from 1892. And I believe that William Lukens, the star in the story, is great something to Kaylee on her mom's side because her mom's maiden name is Lukens. So I have a lot to say on this. I'm not going to explain DNA, family tree, none of it. You can believe it, you can not believe it, but I found it interesting, and I stayed up a couple nights ago because I was just reading all this stuff from way back in the day, and my lord, I'm telling you guys, lots of people stem from Pennsylvania, and I'm telling you, don't tell me these people aren't related unless you're going to give me the receipts, because these people are with their brothers, sisters, daughters, brother, sister's uncle, sister, mama's daughter's daddy's brother. Okay, get the point? And trust and believe, after doing all this, I happen to come across a real big family tree. So I think these Lukens, well, they definitely have ties to many people. And what do you know? Also, Illinois, Idaho, California. What are the odds? But I'm not going to keep talking because this is going to piss me off if it does not record. I have a lot to say about a lot of things, but people need to stop being so negative. I'm watching a lot go on in my own state, and it's not the time for hate, blame, none of that. Be good people. Otherwise, be a grown adult. I don't know. But to the other people that have seemingly brought me into their own nonsense, stop. Leave me alone. Don't drag me into your shit. And y'all ain't fooling nobody, okay? And lastly, maybe some of you yapping, yada, yap. Let's just realize, okay? I heard something so absurd yesterday that I just was like, I've had it. And it wasn't even about me. But y'all be talking so much about good old Pavarotti, J. Embry. Instead of talking, maybe listen. But guess what? I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say to the person who called him a racist, be better, dude. Be better. Oh, and I'm sorry, some of you say J. Ombre. J. Embry is my guess. He's a white dude from wherever the hell he said he was from. Leave the dude alone. And I don't know the guy, but instead of talking, maybe y'all should put on your listening ears and stop. I just don't get it, y'all. This is not the place to be how y'all are being, and stay out of my comments if you're coming to hate on me for other people who you don't even know yourself, okay? So take your witchery elsewhere. I don't know why y'all are picking on me, but at the end of the day, you're not fooling me either. So enjoy the story. I did my best. I did not go back to edit after I did it the first time. So if I mess up somewhere, I don't care, okay? It's the point of the story, the moral of the story. Either you get it or you don't, okay? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you to those of you who are in my live. Thank you to those who donated. I'm not going to say names. Thank you for the Cash App. I appreciate you guys. You are all, for the most part, amazing, beautiful, wonderful, lovely humans. teach the others something, okay? Love y'all. Have a great weekend, and I hope to be live tomorrow sometime. November 13th. It was on November 13th, 1882, though I did not think of the date until afterward, that I discovered that William Lukens was my rival in an affair of the heart. Since I doubt whether any contention between men, even since the earth was first peopled, ever ended as ours did, I've decided to tell the story just as it happened. My name is John Crowdis, and I come from a long line of brave men. If the laurels won by my forefathers in honorable battle entitle me to say it. But Lukens was a secret rival for the heart and hand of Mary Wilkins, so whenever my name was mentioned in her presence, he dubbed me Cowardice, which sounds a little like my name, especially if it's pronounced slowly. Crowdis. As you may learn if you will try to pronounce according to this marking. Lukens and I were born in San Francisco the same year, 1800, but at the time I speak of, we were lawyers in Modesto, California. Apparently good friends. By this I mean that I liked him very well, and there was nothing to indicate that he bore any grudge against me. He knew all about my relations with the woman in the case, whose coquettish and insincere heart was really unworthy of any honest man. But his courtship was wholly unknown to me. Had I known she was playing a fast and loose game, the other man might have had her with my blessing. For I am so proud spirited that where rivalry is possible, or where a woman hesitates for a moment between me and any man, I give up the race. But now to the story. Mary Wilkins knew my views on this matter so thoroughly that she never hinted that there was a rival suitor, though Lukens was a stealthy visitor at the very time she was encouraging me. Of course, he saw my hand, if such illustration is proper, and I innocently believed that it was only a two-handed game. It thus transpired that the fellow secretly hated me, and that he did all in his power to poison the maiden's mind against me, even at the time he was cunningly pretending to be my friend. It has recently come to light that he invented, for Miss Wilkins' ears only, a cock and bull story that reflected seriously on my courage. Something to the effect that I had once permitted a client to accuse me of theft and spit in my face. He said that I was afraid to resent the insult, and that I had been known as John Cowardy ever since that event. No woman respects a coward, and I imagine the Lukens did me much harm by calling me a name which is too painful for me to write again. On November 13th, 1882, I went to my law office as usual, perhaps in brighter spirits than common, for I had received renewed assurances from Miss Wilkins the night before. Under my door, there was an envelope addressed to me, marked personal. It contained a note that read as follows: Friend Crowdis, in return for the favor which you rile last year, by having the court appoint me appraiser in an important case, I beg that you meet me at the Hermitage at 2 o'clock today, or not later than 3. This is a little odd, but my client is peculiar. Come on your wheel and bring this note, which I desire my client to read. You must know him, old Markel, the erratic miner. Bring your fountain pen and a couple of quit claim deeds, for we shall probably leave the Hermitage richer than when we came. Keep this matter a secret, and trust in my tact. Sincerely, William Lukens. I should probably explain that the Hermitage is a lonely spot that nestles in the foothills, some 10 miles northeast of Modesto. It's an abandoned place and is at least 4 miles from human habitation. No prospect is more desolate than the view from its dreary acres. The natural desolation is doubtless made more intense by the fact that an honorable farmer was once murdered there for his money, since which the event abandoned building has been known as the House of Ghosts. Lucan's note was very odd, but the business was apparently also irregular and all that. But it awoke my curiosity. Besides, life is full of surprises, and we were in the far west, so I decided to carry out my friend's request without hesitation. It was now only 10 o'clock, at least 2 hours earlier than I need to start. I occupied my time by writing half a dozen letters. You probably know that men who write a great deal become dual-minded, so that they can compose a letter and mentally hum a tune at the same time, or plan for an evening at the theater, or recall the scenes of childhood as the pen glides over the paper. This double feat of the mind is even rendered easier when one uses a typewriter, which was the way I wrote my letters. Now, it chanced that as I thumped the keys that morning, certain familiar words of Judge Dungan, with whom I'd studied law many years before, ran through my mind unceasingly. And as I pounded away at my work, I heard a voice from the past, rising clearly above the metallic clicking of the machine. It said, "Keep a record of everything and put all contracts in writing." So persistently did the warning ring through my brain that I did what proved to be one of the most important acts of my life. I photographed Lucan's note. I had been an amateur photographer since boyhood, and there was a camera in my office. I straightened out the note, put a plate in the holder, and in a twinkling, the touch of a button had made a counterpart of the little note that was so rich in meaning as to startle the world, as you shall know. I put the original in my pocket, mounted my wheel, and was soon on my way to the Hermitage. But I got there a little late, on account of an accident on the way. "So you're here, all right, old fellow," said Lucans. "Though a trifle late, yes, I'm here," I replied. "But I had to stop and repair a bad puncture, which delayed me a long time." "That's all right," he said, as he nervously rubbed his hands together. "And the delay has done us no harm, for old Markel is not here yet. Now, Crowdis, I shall not say anything to you about details until Markel comes. But the plans are well laid, and success will be the reward." "Of course I'm curious about this," I retorted. "But since the scheme is your own, I cannot urge you to depart from your plans, however mysterious the procedure may seem." "That's wise," he said. Then suddenly, "Have you the note?" I handed it to him. He struck a match, and it was soon ashes. All trace of it gone, so far as he knew. "This will tell no tales," said he, adding, "Suppose we go into this old house and start a fire, for I'm chilly. It's said to be haunted, but that's all hogwash." We went into the deserted cottage. The quaint fire was soon aglow with a roaring blaze, and I enjoyed the genial warmth. Lucans was strangely restless, and when I asked him why he was so nervous, he said he was hungry for one thing, and worried about Markel's delay for another. But my plans must not fail. "Probably all will be well," I said. "And I've had a pleasant ride, even if business fails. Don't worry on my account." "You're too forgiving," he said. Then, "Have you your revolver with you?" I was amazed at such a question, but I replied, "Yes, I always carry it." "But why do you ask?" "Because I forgot mine," he said. "And I think I can bag a few squirrels if you'll lend me your gun. Or perhaps you're a better shot." "I can't shoot against the champion of the county," I replied. "It's kind of you to remember my achievements at the target," he retorted. So I handed him my revolver, and we walked into the yard, stopping near a cluster of trees, not far from the foothills. The squirrels were barking among the high branches, far from the paths of hunters, and there were enough wild vines and autumn leaves in sight to redeem the place from its reputation for desolation. "Let me sneak up to the high ground next to the wood," said Lukens, "while you remain in the open below, for the two of us might frighten the squirrels." I stood in the clearing as he asked me to do. He suddenly stopped and faced me. "I'm about 50 paces from you now, don't you think?" said he. "I suppose that's about the distance," said I, "but as I'm not an expert, I'll take your word for it." 50 paces, he repeated. "That's my favorite distance at target practice. I could send a bullet through your heart or bore out your eye like a flash." And he pointed my revolver at me. "My God, man," I cried. "Be careful, that gun's loaded." And the thought hashed through my mind that I was in the presence of a maniac. There was a strange light in his eyes, which glistened like the eyes of a cat in the dark, even so far away. "Stay where you are," he commanded, as he took another revolver from his hip pocket and put it in an outside pocket on his sack coat. Then he triggered my weapon with great dexterity. There was a slight pause, after which he said, "We're rivals for Mary Wilkins, and you've got the inside track. In fact, she's as good as yours. But the law of survival of the strongest holds good in affairs of the heart as well as in the great world of physical contest." "In the name of God, Bill," I exclaimed, "I didn't know you loved her. If she's received your attentions, it's been unknown to me. I've done you no wrong. You may have her, but don't murder me." I pleaded as my heart pounded against my ribs, a great lump filling my throat. I must have been as white as paper. "It's no use begging," he continued with the solemn firmness of a man of fixed purpose, "because she'll never marry me while you're alive. It's best for me to report that you accidentally shot yourself and that I tried to stanch the wound. That'll make me out a hero, and she'll marry me then. Now, I'll give you your choice. Where do you prefer to be shot?" I could no more prompt reply than if I had been dead. The same numbness came over me that you felt when trying to run from some monster that pursued you in the horrors of a nightmare. But courage came with the reaction, and I said, "You're a lying coward and murderer at heart. But listen before you fire your assassin's bullet. You're a crack shot, and I'm no shot at all. But if you throw me a revolver and give me a shadow of a chance, I'll at least die game. If you murder me in cold blood, you'll never have a day's luck again." My boldness frightened the fiend for a moment, no longer. "It's no use running any chances," he said, "so it's a no-go." It struck me that I ought to make a desperate rush for him, unarmed as I was, but he must have guessed my thought, for his beady eyes flashed at me down the barrel of the revolver as he said, "Try to rush me and I'll double you up with the pain in the stomach. But if you stand like a brave fellow, I'll give you a humane bullet through the head." He then deliberately told me he felt sorry for me. It was beyond human power to save me. I then knew that his mind was fatally bent on murder. "In less than 3 minutes you'll be dead," he said, "so prepare to meet your God. Don't think too hard of me for this, John, for I've struggled against it, but something drives me to do it." I felt that nothing could save me, for the demon had 2 loaded revolvers and an expert skill against my naked hands. The first fright passed away, and I stood fully resigned to die. It's a strange feeling to realize that you're about to be murdered in the very bloom of life and ambition. As I felt the moment of Lucan's preparations for murder, up came his revolver, and he said, "1, then stopped counting to explain. When I say 5, it'll all be over with you, John. Then the slow, deliberate counting rose in clear and cruel tones above the tumult in my brain. 2, a little pause. 3, and I caught a peep of sunlight tangled in the autumn leaves. 4, and I looked straight at him, the cold-blooded demon, hoping that my dying glance would haunt him or that his nerve would fail at the last. His lips never pronounced the fatal 5. Like a flash, he fell dead with a horrible groan. His body struck the ground before I heard the bang of the revolver. His death clutch must have set off the trigger, but the bullet went far from the mark. I was bewildered, then overcome with joy, as if I was carried away on wings. Heavens, what a thundering Niagara of emotions roared in my brain. But I sprang upon the body, thinking to disarm the wretch if he had swooned, to rejoice if death had ended so base a life, I could have finished him as readily as you would kill a viper. But it was death that I looked upon. A bullet from my weapon had pierced the edge of a log, then torn up the ground at a spot at least 10 feet from where Lukens had stood to deliberately murder me. I dug the bullet from a bed of sand and gravel, so far away from the body that it could not have struck him, either directly or on the rebound. But there was a hole in the dead man's head, and his hair was wet with blood and brains. And the tumult of my own emotion, my first thought after rejoicing over my deliverance and his death, was of my own safety. For it looked like a strong case of state against Crowdis, with many circumstances that made me out a murderer. What worried me most as I sat by the corpse with both his revolver and my own in my hands was that a shot had been fired from my revolver. How could I explain that Lukens had accidentally killed himself in this lonely spot with my revolver? In the excitement and fear of that terrible moment, my nerves torn and my brain reeling with conflicting emotions and the presence of the dead, but a hair's breadth from the grave myself, I made the stupid blunder that so often gives an unfortunate situation the appearance of an evidence of crime. I was not brave enough to face the world on the case as it stood. So I buried my revolver with the stealth of a criminal, left his loaded weapon by his side, then hurried home on my bicycle, leaving the world to discover the body of the dead lawyer where it lay. December 25th. This is a gloomy Christmas for me. I've been found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to be hanged in 90 days. Detectives tracked the peculiar wheel point of my bicycle by the indentations made by the patch over the puncture, which I repaired on my way to the Hermitage. Of course, the wheel left its record in this way, right up to the scene of Lucan's death. The sleuths also found a piece of rubber by the wayside. It fits the patch on the tire of the wheel that I rode on that fatal day. And the patch and the rubber, while the two join neatly together against the end of the roll from which I cut them, well, the roll was discovered in my office. There seemed to be no extenuating certain circumstances as the solemn judge views the case, and the public agree that I'm guilty. Besides all this, they dug up my revolver, minus the one exploded cartridge. Of course, the murderer had buried it. The case was now complete, except the proof of a motive. But that was soon brought to light. Mary Wilkins' testimony made the motive as clear as sunlight, for she came forward and explained that poor Willie Lukens, and I were rivals, and added, of course, that I was so jealous. The lawyers badgered her until she also said violent. But she never dared to tell me that poor Willie was her friend. Oh, the wretch. When I told the jury my story, it sounded like a cunning lie. No wonder. I trembled and halted on the witness stand, feeling I was a doomed man, and that my explanations were powerless to explain. I don't think my own mother would have believed me. Besides, the mystery of Lucan's taking off puzzled me, and the terror of the experiences I had undergone had left me weak and erratic. In fact, my attorney suggested the defense of insanity, but I put my veto to that at once, swearing with some spirit that I'd rather be hanged than set free on such humiliating grounds. January 2nd. My wits have returned at last after the racking experiences of the last 6 weeks, though I'm still weak and nervous. The newspapers portray me as a moral monster, and they have sent all sorts of reporters to see me, women masquerading as friends of criminals, and leaders of anti-capital punishment societies, broken down preachers hired to comfort me and report the results of these interviews. In all this uproar, my mind lost its cunning, and I was seized with a panic of fear, which those who saw me regarded as an evidence of guilt. It was therefore freely predicted that I was breaking down. Those more familiar with the conduct of criminals said that I would surely weaken on the gallows and make a clean confession of the whole monstrous crime. Not until yesterday did I remember about the photograph of Lucan's note. My attorneys have secured the plate, and a dozen prints have been made. This will be conclusive proof that I was invited to the Hermitage by Lucan's, but the state's case was based on the theory that I lured him to that lonely spot to murder him. This alone might not be sufficient to acquit me, but it will get me a new trial. It will also divide public sentiment, and the jury may not agree. January 30th. I'm the happiest man on earth. My attorneys have had Lucan's body exhumed and thoroughly examined. The result makes the case the most wonderful in the history of criminal jurisprudence, as will appear by the report of Professor Hazen, the prominent chemist, corroborated by the evidence of Dr. Dozier, who made the autopsy. The vital part of this report runs as follows. We found a hard substance of the size of a large bullet embedded in the brain. It proved to be a meteoric stone of the character common in November. Fireballs. Its chemical components show that it is a true type of the aerolites that fell in heavy showers in November, 1.533. It is well known that the velocity of these heavenly bodies is very great. So the dude in November, because we all know fireballs happen in November in apparently all parts of, the West. So Lucan's was going to kill John, but he didn't because he got slammed by a fireball in the head. Okay? And like Koberger, this guy's being accused of something he didn't do. And if you paid attention, are the dates not eerily similar? I'll finish. So it's published all over the world with photographs of the meteor, the chemist, the doctor, and of everything bearing on this case. The coroner has just invoiced Lucan's effects. There was a small Bible on the inside coat pocket the day he died. A present from his mother, as appeared by her writing on the front leaf. Here's the mother's inscription. Christmas. Presented to William Lucan's by his loving mother. And under these words, this. My son, be very careful what you do on November 13th. For 6 of our family have died on that date. And if you missed it, my point is, Christy, Kaylee's mother, her maiden name was Lucan's. And from my research thus far, they have a lot of things that have happened in the Lucan's family. So she's tied to a William Lucan's for sure. He's 88 years old. I'm not doing DNA, family tree, none of that nonsense. I don't have time for it. But regardless, this is something I found, and I stayed up all night the night before last because I knew I was going to find something, had no clue what. This is a little bit coincidental, if you believe in coincidence.